Recording in progress.
It's okay. The recording will live there here.
Is that right?
Yeah, because Ron can't be quiet for 45 minutes.
I can try.
Yeah, see, he's on recording now. So anyway, it's been a couple weeks since we've been in this. We're going to be in Second Kings
Oh,
the whole day today. We're starting in chapter 4. So I didn't put any Bibles out this. Oh my gosh, what sacrilege!
Burning.
You're right. If y'all remember from 2 weeks ago where we ended, there was war and then there was peace and then there was war and then there was peace. But what we ended on was Elijah being taken up and Elisha being given the mantle of Elijah, or him picking it up and taking over the role of major prophet there in Israel. And Elijah, before he was taken, was given 3 tasks. Y'all remember what those were? No. Okay. Fine. He was to go anoint Jehu king over Israel. At the time, Jehoram was king over Israel. So it was, Elijah here is anointing a future king, very much like Samuel did with David while Saul was still king. Okay?
Future king, not the king now.
Correct, but right. But Elijah, his first task was to anoint Jehu as the future king of Israel. Yes.
Number 1.
That's number 1.
That's number 1.
Number 2 was that he was to go to Aram and anoint Hazael as the future king over Aram. Now, Ben-Hadad is the king in Aram right now. So anyway, and then the third was to anoint Elisha as his successor. Okay? So all 3 of those things happened. And now Elijah has been taken up in what? A whirlwind. But what did they see that accompanied the whirlwind? Right, chariots, fire. Dun, 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 dun. Heavenly chariots, yes. And Elisha was the only one that could really see them. Now, off in the distance are the group of prophets that travel with them. They hear all the commotion, but they really don't know what's happening. They saw the whirlwind because when Elisha comes back, he tells them everything that happened. But they said, "What? We saw Elijah. What happened? We need to go look for him." And Elisha tells them, "No, you don't need to go look for him. You ain't gonna find him." But we really need to go look. Okay. But you're not going to find him. And so for 3 days they search, and of course they didn't find him. They come back all dejected, know that Elisha was right. So that's kind of where we left off. Elisha is starting to perform a few miracles. And if when we as we read through the Kings, or at least Second Kings, we're going to see that Elisha, there are double the amount of miracles that Elisha performs as Elijah ever did. But yet Elijah is the one that we proclaim all the time. So it just goes to show that the little people can be just as important as the celebrities and the sport, all these people. A football team is not made up of, just players. There's coaches, there's health staff, there's all kinds of people. And it's those people, game this past year, Buffalo playing Cincinnati. The safety for Buffalo got hit in the chest, making a tackle.
Oh, that's right.
And who'd they call the hero?
EMS.
The EMS that promptly responded. And that was all put into play about 10 years ago, all the way the EMS responds and things, because it was both teams health people that ran out there. You could think of Elisha as the EMS for all of this. But
Good morning.
if y'all remember, Elisha had, or there, one of the prophets that travels with him is named Gehazi. And I think I mentioned that last week. And to remember his name, he's one that just does whatever Elisha tells him to do. We're going to run into a Gehazi again and find out that he's not who he's cracked up to be. But I tell you all that as a precursor for what we're reading. So we're going to be in 2 Kings chapter 4 to start with, and we're going to be in 2 Kings the whole time. So let me share our screen if I can get my mouse to work here. Click my little button. And share. And we'll go into presentation mode. Okay. 2 Kings chapter 4, we're starting in verse 42. So heads up.
42.
No, 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 42.
Okay. I'm slow.
It's okay. Elisha's already performed a couple of miracles. Okay, now we're going to continue on with these miracles. So, verse 42, a man came from Baal Shalishah, bringing food from the first fruits to the man of God, 20 loaves of barley and fresh ears of grain in his sack. Elisha said, give it to the people and let them eat. But his servant said, how can I set this before 100 people? So he repeated, give it to the people and let them eat. But thus says the Lord, they shall eat and have some left. He set it before them, they ate and had some left, according to the word of the Lord. Okay. Now, there's a triad of three here. I'm trying to remember what. There's three miracles all in a row. Okay. But at the same time, we also have to think of, if y'all remember, this harkens to the feeding of the 5,000 that Jesus does later on, even though this is only 100 people. But remember that the first fruits were specifically for the priests. That's what took care of the priests. The priests would take it, they would divide it into three parts. That's where the tribe comes into. They would divide it into three parts. The fatty part of it would be burned off for God. The meaty portion of it would be given to the priests and their families for their sustenance. And then the rest of it was used as a great feast for the people. And so, even though first fruits were brought as an offering, it was shared with everybody, which is what our offering should be. That's why we often call them first fruits and things. The idea of the tithe kind of came, but that was their law. That was Levitical law. So, and there's a connection to Ahab here because I don't know why. I don't remember why I wrote that in there. I'm sure it'll come up here. But okay, so he said before they ate and had some left according to the word of the Lord. Now on to chapter 5. Naaman, commander of the army of the king of Aram, was a great man and in high favor with his master. This is a very popular story. Probably I think I even preached on it already. High favor with his master because by him the Lord had given victory to Aram. The man, though a mighty warrior, suffered from a skin disease. Now the Arameans on one of their raids is important here, had taken a young girl captive from the land of Israel and she served Naaman's wife. So maybe that's where the connection they have. The young girl, I think that's what it is. The young girl by Jewish tradition was of the family of Ahab. Okay. She was one of the servant girls of Ahab. Verse 3. She said to her mistress, if only my Lord were with the prophet who is in Samaria, he would cure him of his skin disease. Who's the prophet in Samaria? Elisha. Okay. So Naaman went in and told his Lord just what the girl from the land of Israel had said. And the king of Aram said, go then, and I will send along a letter to the king of Israel. He went, taking with him 10 talents of silver, 6,000 shekels of gold, and 10 sets of garments. Now, all those things in today's amounts would equal approximately $1.2 million. So, and garments was a big deal because prophets their clothes wore out pretty good. So 10 garments. He brought the letter to the king of Israel. The king of Israel, remember, none of them are good. which read, when this letter reaches you, know that I have sent to you my servant Naaman, that you may cure him of his skin disease. When the king of Israel read the letter, he tore his clothes and said, good thing there were 10 sets of garments, because now he used to be set of clothes. He tore his clothes and said, am I God to give death or life, that this man sends word to me to cure a man of his skin disease? Just look and see how he's trying to pick a quarrel with me. Now, Ben-Hadad, who's the king of Aram, thinks Jehoram knows Elisha, and that's why he did this. It wasn't that he was hoping that the king of Israel would cure him, but rather that king of Israel knew Elisha well enough. Elisha. And remember, the kings of Israel don't like the prophets very much. You know, they never give them good news. And so he thinks that Ben-Hadad is trying to pick a fight. Because if Naaman comes back and ain't cured, your God must not be powerful enough, kind of thing. So, verse 8, but when Elisha the man of God heard that the king of Israel had torn his clothes, sent a message to the king, why have you torn your clothes? Let him come to me that he may learn that there is a prophet in Israel. Boy, Elisha's a little cocky, ain't he? So Naaman came with his horses and chariots, halted at the entrance of Elisha's house. Elisha sent a messenger to him, saying, go wash in the Jordan 7 times, flesh shall be restored, and you shall be clean. But Naaman became angry and went away, saying, I thought that for me he would surely come out and stand and call on the name of the Lord his God and would wave his hand over the spot and cure the skin disease. Remember, he's probably heard stories of Elijah who has done this. Are not Abana and Pharpar, the rivers of Damascus, better than all the waters of Israel? Could I not wash them and be clean? He turned and went away in a rage. So there's not a true prophet at the palace. Elisha hears about all this and sends for him. Okay. So we come from a point of humility to humiliation. Okay. Naaman, he's got this skin disease, wants to be cured. So he's having to humble himself to go to a foreign nation for curing. But he's humiliated, it seems, by Elisha not actually meeting with him physically. You know, hey, it's like televangelist, hey, send me your money and I'll send you this cloth that will wipe away all the skin disease. This holy water. Yeah, so he's humiliated now. So from a place of humility, and he feels humiliation. But his servants approached and said to him, Father, if the prophet had commanded you to do something difficult, would you not have done it? How much more when all he said to you was, wash and be clean? Go take a bath, but you got to do it in that river. So he went down and immersed himself 7 times. That word immersed means plunge. He basically ran in and cannonballed into the Jordan River. Okay? And he did that 7 times. Immersed himself 7 times in the Jordan, according to the word of the man of God. His flesh was restored like the flesh of a young boy, and he was clean. So, I mean, that's, that's like a spiritual skin graft there. Then he returned to the man of God, he and all his company, came and stood before him and said, now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel. Please accept a present from your servant. But he said, as the Lord lives, whom I serve, I will accept nothing. He urged him to accept, but he refused. So here we come from a point of humiliation, being humiliated, back to humility. Please take this. Okay. I like how they make it easy for me. Then Naaman said, if not, please let 2 mule loads of earth be given to your servant, for your servant will no longer offer burnt offering or sacrifice to any god except holy soil. So since Elisha won't give him, or since Elisha won't allow him to give him a gift, he says, well, how about your gift? How about a gift would be for you to give me 2 cartloads to pull by mules of dirt, this holy dirt around us. That way I can take it back and I'll use that to build an altar on. That way I'm not building it on my sinful nation back. Well, nice idea here. I noticed that, none of our soil has been dug up. What does that mean?
Nobody wants it.
Too much clay.
But may the Lord pardon your servant on one count.
No more.
Well, he said, he's just saying, I'll sacrifice to any god, or won't offer anything or sacrifice anything to any god other than the Lord. But there's one condition. His conditions always get us in trouble. When my master goes into the house of Rimmon to worship there, leaning on my arm, and I bow down in the house of Rimmon, when I do bow down in the house of Rimmon, may the Lord pardon your servant. He's saying, look, I'm required as the king's right hand man to go into this other god's temple, this other god's, shrine. Can God forgive me for that beforehand? So Rimmon, by the way, it's Thunderer. So it's the Aramean god of thunder, like Thor. But Thor was a good guy. Never mind. Okay. He said to him, go in peace. Okay. I speak for God. Okay, that'll be fine. Just maybe say under your breath, this is for you, God. Anyway, but when Naaman had gone from him a short distance, Gehazi, the servant of Elisha, the man of God, thought, my master has let that Aramean Naaman go off too lightly by not accepting from him what he offered. Uh-oh. As the Lord lives, I will run after him and get something from him. So Gehazi went after Naaman. So one of the little traveling prophets with him, and a servant to Elisha, he wants part of the gift. Verse 20, the end of verse 21. When Naaman saw someone running after him, he jumped down from the chariot to meet him and said, is everything all right? He replied, yes, but my master has sent me to say, 2 members of a company of prophets have just come to me from the hill country of Ephraim. Please give them a talent of silver and 2 changes of clothing. Naaman said, please accept 2 talents. Notice he didn't tell him about clothing. Okay. He urged him and tied up 2 talents of silver in 2 bags. So that would have been about 120 pounds.
Wow.
Okay. With 2 changes of clothing. So he did get it. Yeah. He gave them to 2 of his servants who carried them in front of Gehazi. If something don't make sense, read further, right? When he came to the citadel, he took the bags from them and stored them inside. He dismissed the men and they left. He went in and stood before his master, and Elisha said to him, where have you been, Gehazi? He answered, your servant hasn't gone anywhere at all. He was deliberately hiding this stuff from Elisha. And when Elisha asked him, where have you been? I ain't gone nowhere, sir.
Just outside.
Yeah, I remember back in 5th grade, my teacher, Mrs. Fowler, there was a girl in class, and I wasn't a bully. I was kind of quiet. I was academically inclined. I worked on things, but there was a girl in class. But I'm a bully because I didn't stand up. Okay, so let me say that. Okay, I'm guilty because I didn't do it. Anyway, her name was Rebecca Roca, but being kids in 5th grade, we called her Rebecca Roach. Okay,
Yeah.
I know. Anyway, that has nothing to do with the rest of the story, other than she was always picked on. During a test or a quiz of some sort, I had finished pretty quickly. I had no problem with 5th grade. So again, has nothing to do with the story other than I finished my test early. And what we typically did was when you finish your test early, you would just turn your paper over, put your pencil away, and just kind of put your head on your desk. You're right. Well, in the room, there's all quiet there except for pencils marking on stuff. And you hear it. Now, it wasn't me, but Miss Fowler immediately goes, Rebecca? And Rebecca says, what? I wasn't whistling. And Miss Fowler was like, I didn't think you were. Are you done with your test? She told on herself. Well, that's kind of what Gehazi has done here. Elisha knows he was gone. I mean, what? I wasn't gone. Okay. Verse 26. But he said to him, did I not go with you in spirit when someone left his chariot to meet you? Oh, so he knows exactly what happened. And you remember that he dismissed those other guys They probably were just cool. Yeah, and he gave us all this stuff. We don't know what Gehazi did with it. Yeah. Is this a time to accept silver and to accept clothing, olive orchards and vineyards, sheep and oxen, and male and female slaves? Therefore, the skin disease of Naaman shall cling to you and to your descendants forever. So he left his presence diseased as white as snow. So you want to know what Naaman has, or you want to have what Naaman has? Then here you go. Oh, I got to change. Here you go. What happened there? Yeah, I spelled it wrong. Okay. Yeah. So you want what Naaman has? So okay, take the silver, take the clothing, but you also take disease. Chapter 6. Now the company of prophets said to Elisha, "As you see, the place where we live under your charge is too small for us." Hang on just a second. I want to go back. Notice that it says that the skin disease of Naaman shall cling to you and to your descendants forever. Okay. Keep that in the back of your mind while we read. Okay. As you see, the place where we live under your charge is too small for us. Let us go to the Jordan and let us collect logs there, one for each of us, and build a place there for us to live. Man, I hope they're going to cut that log up into planks or something. Make a dwelling. I mean, I would hate for them to just, cut down a log, set it on the ground and say, "There's my home." Now, what he's saying is that because of the company of prophets that's with them, they've gotten a little large. They need a bigger dwelling for all of them. And so one log per person should be enough to build this structure. He answered, "Do so." Then one of them said, "Please come with your servants." And he answered, "I will." That's nice. So he went with them. When they came to the Jordan, they cut down trees. But as one was felling a log, his axe head fell into the water. Don't read further yet. Okay. I had to change my page. Now you can. He cried out, "Alas, master, it was borrowed." Oh no. He borrowed an axe head, which was probably bronze of some sort. Remember, this is the early Bronze Age. That stuff was not easily to come by. Then the man of God said, "Where did it fall?" When he showed him the place, he cut off a stick. Now, remember, they're cutting down trees and logs and things. And here he takes a stick, probably from one of the trees they're falling. He threw it in there and made the iron float. He said, "Pick it up." So he reached out his hand and took it. Wow. I don't know of anything in the world that would cause iron to float on the water. And, in Israel, they've got the Dead Sea, and it's so salty that, the density of it, your body sits higher in the water, or it rests higher in the water because you're not displacing as much of it. Right. But think about that. What would have had to happen to make iron? I mean, I don't think iron would float in the Dead Sea. I think it's too dense. So anyway, you're right. I'm pretty sure y'all have heard this story. Y'all just probably ain't heard it in a long time. That was that. So he's fed 100 people. He has caused a person to call it a miracle, but he's caused a person to develop leprosy or a skin disease of some sort. And now he's made iron to float on the water. Now we go to the next one. Once, when the king of Aram was at war with Israel, he took counsel with his officers. He said, "At such and such a place shall be my camp." It's interesting that the writer adds so much detail to all these stories, but he can't remember the place that was mentioned. Right. At such and such place shall be my camp. But the man of God sent word to the king of Israel, "Take care not to pass this place, for the Arameans are going down there." The king of Israel sent word to the place in which the man of God spoke. More than once or twice, he warned the place so it was on the alert. So Elisha was kind of acting as a warning system or a security system to the king of Israel, saying, "Hey, don't let your people pass through there. Arameans are waiting to rob you, kill you, that kind of thing." The mind of the king of Aram was greatly perturbed because of this. He called his officers and said to them, "Now tell me, who among us is betraying us to the king of Israel? He thinks there's a mole in his kingdom." Then one of his officers said, "No one, my lord king. It is Elisha, the prophet in Israel, who tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedchamber." He said, "Go and find where he is. I will send and seize him." He was told, "He is in Dothan." Did y'all know Elisha went to Alabama? I didn't know that. So he sent horses and chariots there and a great army. They came by night and surrounded the city. When an attendant of the man of God rose early in the morning and went out, an army with horses and chariots was all around the city. His servant said, "Alas, master, what shall we do?" He replied, "Do not be afraid, for there are more with us than there are with them." Then Elisha prayed, "O Lord, please open his eyes that he may see." So the Lord opened the eyes of the servant, and he saw the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around him.
Elijah be like.
I know, right? Our eyes were open. So Elisha, remember, he did not see when Elijah was being taken up and all that. He didn't see those horses until Elijah prayed that he could see. All this time now, Elisha's eyes have been spiritually opened. He can see all this happening. That's why he knows what's going on.
Is it one of those things where it's rolled back, is in Stephen and?
Possibly, but it's like a constant thing as opposed to just a temporary. Okay. So the servant has now been able to see what's going on. Now I will give you a spoiler alert. We don't know whether the eyes of the servant were opened forever by this point. I think it's just a temporary thing. It never mentions. So, but I think it's just wonderful that Elisha has been, one person prayed for him to be able to see, and he's had this ability ever since. It's amazing what one person. When the Arameans came down against him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, "Strike this people, please, with blindness." Well, they're already spiritually blind. They can't see all of. So he struck them with a blindness as Elisha had asked. Elisha said to them, "This is not the way, and this is not the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek." And he led them to Samaria. So all the Aramean soldiers are blind. And Elisha, them not knowing who he is, they only hear his voice and all that, says, "Come with me, I know the way, let's go back." And so they're just following his voice. Okay? As soon as they entered Samaria, so he took them back to the capital city, Elisha said, "Oh Lord, open the eyes of these men so that they may see." Not spiritually see, but physically see. The Lord opened their eyes and they saw that they were inside Samaria. So they're inside the city wall. This is, by the way, is one of those spiritual lies, or those righteous lies. When the king of Israel, okay, so they were inside Samaria. When the king of Israel saw them, he said to Elisha, "Father, shall I strike them down? Shall I strike them? Shall I strike them?" He answered, that's Elisha. Elisha answered, "No, would you strike those whom you have taken captive with your sword and with your bow? Set food and water before them so that they may eat and drink, and let them go to their master. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies." I wonder what that brings up there. So he prepared for them a great feast. So they go from sight to blindness to sight.
Hungry.
After they ate and drank, he sent them on their way, and they went to their master. Now, who's their master? Maybe Naaman. Remember, he's the general Aramean. And the Arameans no longer came raiding into the land of Israel. Now, I say that word raiding doesn't mean they didn't go to war. It means they weren't hit and miss kind of thing. Okay. Shekel, I wrote these all here because we're about to get into shekels and things. A shekel was worth anywhere from $5 to $25 in nowadays. A donkey head would cost somebody about $400 to $2,000 now. Don't ask me how I know that.
I didn't know that.
I looked it up. And dove dung apparently is a big deal. 25 to 100.
Fertilizer.
Right.
Oh, is it?
With all the mourning doves around my house, y'all heard of cowbirds, right? The birds around us, we put out bird seed and they've eaten so much, I'm beginning to think that I've got pig birds, because I'm surprised they can even get off the ground. They eat that stuff so fast and so much of it.
Maybe squirrels get it.
No, we don't have any squirrels, and it's really not grackles or although I've seen one, but no, it's mourning doves. They keep the bird feeder is small, so they really can't get on it very well. They are able to get on it, flap their wings, reach around, maybe grab one, but it's easier for them to eat on the ground. It's the sparrows and things. Oh my gosh, they're eating so much. I don't know how they're flying. Okay. Sometime later, don't know how long, King Ben-Hadad of Aram mustered his entire army. He marched against Samaria and laid siege to it. As the siege continued, famine in Samaria became so great that donkey's head was sold for 80 shekels of silver and 1/4 what you have of dove's dung for 5 shekels of silver. I don't remember when. Oh, well, other than, like a public transportation. Anyway, that's why I put shekels up there, $5 to $25. So 80 shekels of silver for a donkey's head. That's how we came up with that.
What great word is ahead of it though?
Food. I know in the Near East that they eat every part of an animal or use every part.
It's supposed to be good ahead of them.
I know they
Goat.
goat. Yeah, I know they put goat in soups and the goat head in soups. Now as the king, so basically he's saying, now a siege, if y'all remember, was it was kind of like a blockade. Wasn't so much an attack on a city as it was a blockade to keep trade from going in and out. So they're starving them. Okay. Now as the king of Israel, verse 26. Now as the king of Israel was walking on the city wall, a woman cried out to him, "Help, my lord king." He said, "If the Lord does not help you, where would my help come from? From the threshing floor or from the winepress?" But then the king asked her, "What is your complaint?" He's kind of like, "Really? You think I'm suffering just like you are, kind of. What do you expect me to do?" And then he kind of comes and says, "Okay, what is your complaint?" She answered, "This woman said to me, 'Give up your son. We will eat him today and we will eat my son tomorrow.' This is how bad things are. So we cooked my son and ate him.
Wow.
The next day I said to her, 'Give up your son and we will eat him.' But she has hidden her son." When the king heard the words of the woman, he tore his clothes. Maybe he's going through a lot of clothes. Now, since he was walking on the city wall, the people could see that he had sackcloth on his body underneath. He was already in mourning. He was hiding his mourning. He was hiding his grief so that people would be lifted up by his presence. But when he ripped his clothing off, they could see he's wearing sackcloth. And he said, "So may God do to me and more, if the head of Elisha son of Shaphat stays on his shoulders today." So he dispatched a man from his presence. So he's blaming Elisha for all this. Now Elisha was sitting in his house and the elders were sitting with him. Oh, he's blaming Elisha, remember, because Elisha told him, "Hey, you don't want to kill all these soldiers, let them go back." Right? That's probably why he's mad at Elisha, because he didn't get to kill them, and now they're attacking. Now they're besieging. Now Elisha was sitting in his house, that new house with all those walls, and the elders were sitting with him. Before the messenger arrived, Elisha said to the elders, "Are you aware that this murderer has sent someone to take off my head?" Remember, he can spiritually see everything. "When the messenger comes, see that you shut the door and hold it closed against him. Is not the sound of his master's feet behind him?" So, yeah, you're going to get we got a messenger coming and the king is coming right behind. So when he gets here, lock the door and the king will come looking for him. So, while he was still speaking with them, the king came down to him and said, so all this apparently happened. That's amazing what happened in verse. "This trouble is from the Lord. Why should I hope in the Lord any longer?" That's the king talking to him. On to chapter 7. Man, I gotta hurry up. But Elisha said, "Hear the word of the Lord. Thus says the Lord, tomorrow about this time a measure of choice meal shall be sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel at the gate of Samaria." So things are going to get a whole lot better. Then the captain on whose hand the king leaned said to the man of God, "Even if the Lord were to make windows in the sky, could such a thing happen?" So they're saying, even if God opened up the sky to let all this food come down, really? You think that's what's gonna happen? You know, we've never seen anything like that. But he said, you shall see it with your own eyes, but you shall not eat from it. So he misses the blessing due to disbelief. Now there were 4 men with a defiling skin disease outside the city gate who said to one another, why should we sit here until we die? The Jewish tradition is that this is Gehazi and his 3 sons. Remember Gehazi? Remember I told y'all he had stricken with that skin disease? Okay. We don't have any scriptural basis for that, but Jewish tradition. But that's who that was. If we say, let us enter the city, the famine is in the city, we shall die there. But if we sit here, we shall also die. Therefore, let us desert to the Aramean camp. If they spare our lives, we shall live. And if they kill us, we shall die. So, yeah.
Good thought.
So, well, they're at wit's end. No, you know, nothing, no choice for them is good. So they arose at twilight to go to the Aramean camp. But when they came to the edge of the Aramean camp, there was no one there at all. For the Lord had caused the Aramean army to hear the sound of chariots and of horses, the sound of a great army, so that they said to one another, the king of Israel has hired the kings of the Hittites and the kings of Egypt to fight against us. So they fled away in the twilight and abandoned their tents, their horses, and their donkeys, leaving the camp just as it was, and fled for their lives. So God has opened the ears of the Aramean army, but not their eyes. They could hear everything going on, but they couldn't see anything. I don't know about y'all. My middle brother Matthew has we've been 3 boys. I was the oldest of 3. I was the academic. Matthew, the middle brother, he was the practical one. He hands on. He could tear things apart, put it back together, and never miss it. He's just he was street smart. James was the athlete. My youngest brother, he was the athlete. Now he's a truck driver. So I say that Matthew has, you know, he hasn't had the easiest life. Him and his wife Jen, my sister-in-law, they haven't been able to have kids. I mean, they're 50. Right? They're kind of giving up on. But he has done odd things throughout his life. A lot of it audio-visual equipment related. He helped set up sound systems for major concerts, Toyota Center and things like that. So he does that kind of thing. Right now, he is you may understand it better, but he inspects homes. He's not an inspector per se, but he's like a risk assessor for houses. So they, like before an inspector gets there, like a consultant, I guess, you know, hey, fix this up for the inspector. So that's what he does now. But on the side, he goes out and is the skeptic for a group of people that go to haunted places and spend the night there. He's the skeptic with them. That's what he does.
He gets paid to be a skeptic.
He goes with a group of people that are looking for ghosts and things.
Have they found any yet?
He said there have been some weird things, but
He's the skeptic.
he's the skeptic. But you know, but Matt's practical. You know, just because he can't explain them doesn't mean there's no explanation for them. Okay, so anyway, yeah, I won't go into what I believe because I'm here all week. So you can imagine these people hearing all this going on around them and not knowing what's going on. And I only tell that story to get it happens. When these diseased men come off the edge of the camp, remember this, you know, four guys that are there, or well, his descendants. They went into a tent, ate and drank, carried off silver, gold, and clothing, and went and hid them. Then they came back, entered another tent, carried off things from it, went and hid them. So they're going from tent to tent to tent of the Aramean camp because the Aramean army has just left everything. They're going from tent to tent, taking things, going and hiding it like squirrels, and then coming back, taking other things. Then they said to one another, what we are doing is wrong. Oh, now you know. This is a day of good news. If we're silent and wait until morning light, we will be found guilty. Therefore, let us go and tell the king's household, saying, there's so much stuff here. Other people are going to discover this. They're going to see us doing this, and they're going to, you know, we're going to get in trouble. So let's go tell somebody. Maybe they won't know that we went into these 2 or 3 tents. So they came and called to the gatekeepers in the city. Remember, they can't go into the city because of the skin disease. Yeah. They could, sir. So they came and called the gatekeepers of the city and told them, we went to the Aramean camp, there was no one to be seen or heard there, nothing but the horses tied, the donkeys tied, and the tents as they were. Then the gatekeepers called out and proclaimed it to the king's household. The king got up in the night and said to his servants, I will tell you what the Arameans have prepared against us. One of his servants said, let some men take 5 of the remaining horses, since those left here will suffer the fate of the whole multitude of Israel that have perished already. Let us send and find out. So they don't believe him. They don't believe these 4 guys. And so some of their horses have died, or they've killed them for food or something like that. So let's take 5 of the remaining horses. So he's only sending like 5 soldiers out there. So they took two mounted men, and the king sent them after the Aramean army, saying, go and find out. So they went after them as far as the Jordan. The whole way was littered with garments and equipment that the Arameans had thrown away in their haste. So the messengers returned and told the king. Then the people went out and plundered the camp of the Arameans. So a measure of choice meal was sold for a shekel, and 2 measures of barley for a shekel, according to the word of the Lord. Now the king had appointed the captain on whose hand he leaned to have charge of the gate. A measure was about 30,000 years, or 20 to 24 pounds. So you can imagine, a 20-pound sack of grain being sold for just a couple bucks, $5. The people trampled in, make sure of this. Now the king had appointed the captain on whose hand he leaned to have charge of the gate. So the captain of the guard is guarding the gate at this point. When the news comes back that there's all this food, all this stuff out there, the people trampling to death at the gate, just as the man of God had said when the king came down there. So they're all rushing out, and he gets trampled to death. For when the man of God had said to the king, 2 measures of barley shall be sold for a shekel, and a measure of choice meal for a shekel. About this time tomorrow at the gate of Samaria, the captain had answered the man of God, even if the Lord were to make windows in the sky, can such a thing happen? He's just reminding him of all this. And he had answered, you shall see it with your own eyes, but you shall not eat from it. So that's the guy that said that. And so he gets killed. He doesn't get to enjoy, he doesn't get to reap the bounty. It did indeed happen to him. The people trampled him to death. Chapter 8. Now Elisha had said to the woman whose son he had restored to life, remember that happened the last time we met, get up and go with your household and settle wherever you can, for the Lord has called for a famine, and it will come on the land for 7 years. Now, they've just gotten through this siege, and now there's going to be a famine for 7 years. Things don't look good. So the woman got up and did according to the word of the God. She went with her household and settled in the land of the Philistines 7 years. At the end of the 7 years, when the woman returned from the land of the Philistines, she set out to appeal to the king for her house and her land. Now that's that was a law that they could do that. So, now the king was talking with Gehazi, the servant of the man of God. Now, if the king's talking to him, what does that say? Probably being said skin disease has been cured or is gone or whatnot. Tell me all the great things that Elisha has done. Now it's taken me all morning to tell you all this. That there's no telling what he's telling him to. So while he was telling the king how Elisha had restored a dead person alive, the woman whose son he had restored to life appealed to the king for her house and her land. Gehazi said, "My lord king, here is the woman, here is her son, whom Elisha restored alive." When the king questioned the woman, she told him. For the king appointed an official for her, saying, "Restore all that was hers, together with all the revenue of the fields from the day that she left me, or that she left the land until now." So, right. I think the king of Israel is getting to the point that he realizes, man, I just need this. Every time I disagree with this Elisha, things go bad. How about let's do one good thing here, and maybe things will get right. Maybe this famine will be over or something. Elisha went to Damascus while King Ben-Hadad of Aram was ill. When it was told him the man of God has come here, the king said to Hazael, remember that name? Take a present with you and go to meet the man of God. Inquire of the Lord through him whether I shall recover from this illness. So Hazael went to meet him, taking a present with him, all kinds of goods of Damascus, 40 camel loads.
Wow.
You need to go to.
Yeah,
I'll be there shortly.
okay.
Carolyn's on the way. When he entered, when he entered and stood before him, he said, "Your son, King Ben-Hadad of Aram, has sent me to you, saying, shall I recover from this illness?" Elisha said to him, "Go say to him, you shall certainly recover. But the Lord has shown me that he shall certainly die." Another righteous line here.
Electric light.
He fixed his gaze and stared at him to the point of embarrassment. Then the man of God wept. So Elisha has told the servant, King Aram's sick. Hazael. He's told Hazael. King Aram, Hazael's told him, King Aram is sick. He sent me to ask you, is he going to recover? And so Elisha tells him, look, go back, tell him that yes, he will recover, but no, he won't.
Hmm.
And Hazael don't believe any of this. He can't believe Elisha's telling him this, and he just stared at him like, really? That's what you want me to do?
You want me to lie?
And it's so much so that Elisha weeps. Hazael asked, why does my Lord weep? He answered, because I know the evil that you will do to the people of Israel. You will set their fortresses on fire. You will kill their young men with the sword, dash in pieces their little ones, and rip up the pregnant women. Hazael said, what is your servant, who is a mere dog, that he should do this great thing? Elisha answered, the Lord has shown me that you are the king over Aram. Remember, Elisha did that originally. Then he left Elisha and went to his master Ben-Hadad, who said to him, what did Elisha say to you? And he answered, he told me that he would certainly recover. So he didn't know him. But the next day he took the bed cover and dipped it in water and spread it over the king's face until he died. And Hazael succeeded.
Is that the first wonder morning?
Maybe. Now, there is an ancient Assyrian inscription called the Berlin inscription that says in English, translated in English, Hazael, the son of nobody, seized the throne. Now, that's a designation indicates that he was a usurper with no dynastic line. He had no royal blood at all. So next week, disease and death of Jehoram, Ahaziah reigns over Judah. The anointing of Jehu, so he's going to be anointed a second time, this time by Elisha. Joram of Israel killed. Ahaziah of Judah killed. Jezebel's violent death, massacre of Ahab's descendants, and the slaughter of the worshipers.
Bloodshed.
A lot of dying next week. A lot of dying.
Both on here.
So, any questions for this one? Go with God. See y'all here in just a little bit.
Yeah.